Hey, have a good time, everybody. What the hell, it'll all be over soon.
All right, here we go. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming back to join us for this, what's going to be a lot of fun session with Marty Pottinger. My name's Lynn McCormick. I'm the director of LISC, Creative Placemaking, and in partnership and on behalf of our National Endowment for the Arts team, we welcome you here today for this last session of the first day of the Learning Lab. Just a quick few notes for those of you who haven't joined us already today. We are really trying to make these sessions interactive, and we hope that you will join us by starting with your name on your little video screen. Put your first name, your pronouns, and your project location. We are recording the sessions. If we do post these, we won't be posting in-depth conversations. So the breakouts that we'll be doing won't be recorded, but the presenting by the presenter will be. In all of our conversations, we ask that you listen deeply to each other and that you make no assumptions about where people are coming from or the context of their community. So just ask a lot of questions if it becomes, if you're in a conversation. We're encouraging people to really connect with each other and use the chat in all the sessions. You can, if something comes up and someone says something that you're really interested in following up with, feel free to just private message them using the chat and follow up with them. Also, encourage you to connect with the resource team members as well. We'll have a few resource team members on the call with us. They have little asterisks in front of their names. You've met some of them already. They may be in some of the breakout sessions, so feel free to connect with them and take their and ask for their expertise outside of this. If you haven't already, register using the Eventbrite invitation that was sent out earlier on a couple weeks ago. We're just trying to track attendees and make sure that we're able to follow up with all of you. We'll be saving the list to folks who sign in, but we also just want you to fill out that registration if you can. We do have closed captioning as well, so if anyone needs that, there's a little CC button at the bottom. And I will just say tomorrow we'll start up again at noon, and we're looking forward to seeing all of you again then. But let's just kick it over to Marty, and she's going to take it away.
Hey, team. Hi, everybody. Let me get you in a gallery view. Hi. Hi, everybody. Hello. Hello. Little movement. Hi, Maggie. Hi, Mary. It was good to be with you just then. And good to see some new names and some faces. You who are cooking or eating and not showing yourself, okay. But as soon as you finish, by all means, turn your video on, please. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement that I like to write them for each thing. It's good practice, right? So I'm Marty Pottinger. I am with all of you today. We are together where I am on the land of the Wabanaki Confederacy. It's home of 5 tribes for the last 13,000 years: Passamaquoddy, Penobscot, Maliseet, Mi'kmaq, and Abenaki. As part of this acknowledgement today, I pledge to do the work I need to do to be in relationship with and caretaker of the land, her waters, and her creatures, and to be not only a friend, but an ally to Indigenous people here and throughout North America. That is in the chat as well. I'm going to have us do a go-round. I think we can pull this off, although there isn't really a hell of a lot of time. I'm going to ask all of you to do what I'm sure you already are half decent at, which is multitask. And that is, I'm going to call on some of you at least. And if we run out of time, then, you know, we ran out of time. But put it in the chat. I'm asking you for 1-sentence answers to 2 questions. Or the first question could be not even a whole sentence. So the first question is, and I'll just call on you, okay? And I'll call on you people who have your videos off too. You don't have to turn them on, but let's hear your voice. So you'll have to all unmute yourselves when it's your turn, if you would. The first question is, what's one positive difference your local government made in your life today? What's one positive difference your local government made to your life today, for real? Christine, are you willing to kick it?
Sorry, you mean me? Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know how many Christines there
I
are in
know,
this room.
it's a real issue.
Oh, yeah. Well, I love the safe streets thing that's happening right now in the pandemic. And I hope as much as possible, those can stay closed to cars and open
Great.
to humans.
Perfect. And then if you're willing, Christine, to go to the second question, which is what's in one sentence, what brought you here to this today?
I just am happy to learn about municipal artist residencies because I'm doing my very first one now.
Sweet. Thank you. You want to kick it to somebody? Just pick a name.
Okay, sure. Let me go into gallery view. Let's see. How about Jamie?
Great. So we'll have to.
I'm making sure I'm the only Jamie on the call.
Yeah, just assume you are. Even if you crash, we'll get you separated.
Hey everyone, Jamie Horder. I think one thing that my local government has done well has been their response to COVID.
Just
and
today.
setting,
Okay, that's good. But just today, this since you woke up.
yeah, no, I think I see them out and about setting a good example.
Got it. Nice. And what's one thing in the sentence that brought you here today?
I'm always interested in the wealth of conversation that happens in these spaces.
Yeah. Who you want to go next? Not my dog.
How about Vicky?
Hi there, you did catch me eating lunch. So sorry about that. You know what? I am grateful to my small town that I live in, which is Wadena, Minnesota, because they've been really open-minded. And today, about some new green space that's opening up. And I just learned today that they've been in touch with the Department of Transportation to work with us on it. What brought me here today is I'm in a lot of projects with municipal governments, and I just want to learn as much as I can.
Oh, good. I'll be looking to you for expert advice.
Oh,
too,
no.
Okay? Yeah, you're from it. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Pick somebody else, Vicky, please. And back
Oh,
to you, Lunch.
sure. Christine, a W? Oh, or did we
She
already-
went. She's
she
kicked
went.
it off.
Okay. How about Mary?
Awesome.
Hi. I guess a positive difference. I saw some trees that had been kind of a hazard that were being cut down today. So while it's always sad to see a tree being cut down, it did look like it was for a safe thing. So that was good. And I am here because I am in the midst of one project and looking ahead to hopefully partnering with our city on another grant that we'll be applying for. So hoping to learn some more about how to best communicate.
Awesome. If it's okay with everybody, can we hear from Maggie and Mary, and then we'll put the rest of you, put it in the chat, please?
I guess I'll kick it to the other Mary.
So today I had a good dialogue with the mayor's office, which is municipal, so that counts, about how to not only deal with stormwater management, but to deal with it so that it's not just about digging a ditch, but finding a way for people to live and work and play where there's sometimes water. So we're taking innovative and artistic views of scaping the landscape to deal with climate change.
Great. And Mary, one sentence, what brought you here?
Learn more from people like you.
Okay, deal. Maggie?
Okay, so I'm actually leaving this session at 4 because I'm going to our county's economic development organization or agency or whatever is forming a new commission on for equitable economic development in the county. And I've been invited to be a member of the commission. And so this will be our first session, and I'm very excited about that. And then the reason that I came here is very simple. It's because I know I have a lot to learn. And this is a great place to learn. Every time everybody sort of contributes generously. And so I learn a lot.
Yeah, me too. Great, great. Everybody, thanks for putting the stuff in the chat as well. They're going to save the chat, so we'll have access to it. So I'm going to do a bit of a whirlwind. I mean, it's 15 minutes, but kind of what I think of as an imagination stretch, just in case. I already got to be at the session before this and heard about great projects. So this may not be as much of a stretch as sometimes it is, because you all are already knee deep, if not neck deep, in this work. But I'm going to share my screen and take us through. There we go. We're all got used to watching other people struggle with these things. So what button do I rename myself with? So welcome everybody, you municipal and elected humans, you artists, community members, activists, and organizers. Thank you for what you're doing to keep arts and creativity a part of people's lives, including yours. I run something, it was an initiative called Art at Work out of the city of Portland, Maine. It became the name of the nonprofit I run called Terremoto Inc., which is now AKA Art at Work. And the way I have thought about it is how to make creative placemaking with people at the center. Since most of our greatest challenges are rooted in our relationships, relationships are definitely a place where creativity thrives. For those of you who've seen the TED Talk, I make it quite clear that for me, creativity is such an inherent part of our human nature that it belongs in the periodic table. I've noticed over like 40 years of doing this work, I'm not kidding, that the unique power of creativity list includes waking up a flexible thinking that usually lies just out of reach right when you need it. It enlivens our ability, it increases our ability, our capacity to collaborate with other people. So people who are engaged in it, you've all seen this because you're already obviously doing the work, but people who are working in a creative context are more able to collaborate. It also awakens what I call a reality-based hope. And for you white Protestants among us, I feel like there's some kind of ever sniffing manufactured version of hope that we kind of lug with us as we go on through life as best we can. And there's a different kind of hope that I've discovered through creative engagement. It also makes our ability to hold contradictions, increases that as well, especially our own. And I really have noticed that in the more tougher, more controversial projects that I've done, that people have been able to listen and actually get something from people with quite opposite points of view. And then I think my favorite, and certainly necessary in the times we're living in, it brings forward a courage in individuals to take the kinds of risks that are necessary to affect change. So here's a devastating pandemic. It's created the opportunity at the same time to create a far more equitable and sustainable systems amidst the collapse and inequitability and unsustainability of the one. And creativity has an essential role to play, unlike any other. City water tunnel. So now we're going to take a zip, zip, zap through a few projects, or 3 times a few. City water tunnel. All this is on artatwork.us site, www.artatwork.us. So this is going to be pretty fast. But what this project proved and what it did was that you could take a public works project that was going to be for 60 years and literally impact probably tens of thousands, if not even more, people's lives and notion of where they live and what's possible in their lives that they didn't even know that a project of this scale and this size was going on. You can deepen people's connection to the city government through appreciation and through recognition of the role that it plays in our lives. And it can also kind of make sweet poetry for individuals about their relationship to water. Abundance was a 4-year project. I got to interview 30 minimum wage workers and 30 multimillionaires, asking them the same set of 9 questions. There's a website about all these projects. And it toured a lot. And these are some of the questions. Again, this is the rapid fire tour, but one of my favorites was, what's a lie you tell yourself about money? First thought. What's a lie you tell yourself about money? First thought, everybody. Okay. Put a memo sticker on it if you didn't have one. Here we are now in Portland, Maine, 2005. There was a really upsetting and shocking to Southern Maine Border Patrol raid in 2005 in downtown Portland. And I was asked to come up from New York City and do a play in response with community members. So here we have the mayor, a Sudanese leader, actual, writer who's living in a tent by the railroad tracks, an indigenous Mi'kmaq woman, and a Chicana Episcopalian priest, and others all came together and did a play. And it was very successful in terms of people coming. But a lot of times in live performances, at least in my experience, people stay as long as the whole play afterwards because they so want to talk. It's so invited them. And those kind of conversations you just can't have at a public hearing, right? You can't, it's just not, there's just a depth of safety and connection. And there's a way that our hearts and spirits and minds are engaged that's very unique, in my opinion, to performance and live theater in particular. So people left with a completely different clarity about where they lived, what was their community, what was their home, who was in it. It was very powerful. I ended up succeeding in wheedling my way into city government in Portland, Maine. It took another 1.5 years, but started the Arts and Equity Initiative. You can read this text, but it was to figure out, directly working with inside a municipality, how to create arts projects that addressed issues that local government was struggling with from the local government, right? Not from outside it, but from inside it. So some of the projects, the police, when I got there, were having historic low morale. I won't tell you the stories, but it was pretty intense. And for those of you who have a chance to think about it, you certainly will realize that that is a terrible thing for a community, but it's also a terrible thing for people who are the most vulnerable, right? It's terrible for the police officers in terms of their marriages, their lives, their, risk for substance abuse, but it's also terrible for the people of color, for the low-income people, for anybody who's likely, who's likely to end up being engaged with them if they're having historical low morale. And that was a police poetry calendar. We did it for 2 years, 83%, thanks to Kresge funded evaluation, 83% of the officers said it improved their morale. And this was Public Works. The Public Works Department is almost entirely identified as white. They had a plethora of racial discrimination lawsuits. I was able to kind of pick the projects that I worked on, and I was trying to pick projects that could really be tough, but make a case for the rest of the nation to realize, oh, this could actually, how else are we going to do this? And as I said to the Public Works director in selling the project or pitching it, I said, this is something an employee barbecue is not going to fix, right? Which is one of my favorite all-time lines. And feel free to use it. And we met, the department head was extremely helpful. And we met with a lot of in story circles where the topic was to reclaim your actual ethnicity, right? Reclaim that you're Greek and Italian and Russian and Polish and Franco and Irish, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everyone, by the way. And weaken, my notion was to weaken the sense of whiteness, right? To actually take pride in your actual identity as a way of combating racism. And a remarkable artist you'll see in a slide in a minute, I realized in rehearsing this, brought the tools, and they made images of their work lives and their home lives and their identity and the stories they'd reclaimed about growing up and grandparents and this and that. And then they made them into prints, which were hung all over the entire kind of terrain of Public Works and in a special exhibit in City Hall. Summer of 2099, the police killed David Ocott. The police chief called me in, and and asked if I would consider doing a performance, which I totally hadn't anticipated. I realized it had the potential for great marketing, but was it going to really be about you know what the word I'm saying, transformance. That's funny. It's like performance, transformance. I never thought of that. And so I said I could only do it that we weren't a PR operation. We're not for public relations. We actually were talking about changing the conditions of things, so that he would need to ensure that the cops most likely to cross a line were actually participating in the project. And that went on for a while. He ended up agreeing. Some officers signed on to help make sure that was true. And the project began. Without needing his permission and without asking for it, I commissioned a second performance with African-born youth who were going to the high school about their relationship to the cops. So when it came time for to do the performance for the 3 high schools and the public at the library, we had 2 shows. We had one by these students and one by the cops. And the whole thing was called Forest City Times, which is one of the nicknames for Portland. And at the end of the performance, this is the one time, this is the last show at the public library. And you can see this is the first time you saw this kind of connection. And we all know what it's like, how happy we are when a performance is over. So, and our job is done. So these are some of the officers who participated. And then this is Daniel Minter, the artist I mentioned from Southern Georgia, who's been in Portland for a long time, Daniel Minter. And here we're doing a project with Preble Street Homeless Resource Center. And then we did a project, our first Art Town project, Meeting Place, was called Meeting Place. And it was, Portland has 14 neighborhood associations, which I don't know, those of you who know about neighborhood associations, but I'm not going to write the book. And none of them have any diversity. They don't have age diversity, national, racial, economic, but they do have gender diversity, right? So the 4 of the main strongest ones, or 3 of the strongest ones, agreed to participate for a year, and with a monthly arts-based workshop to help them build the skills and the resources to actually diversify. And so we had drumming workshops, we had poetry workshops, we had singing workshops. And this one was one of the projects. Each neighborhood had their own set of projects, although they all share, you know, we did the same 4 workshops each month with the different groups. And this was distributing 20,000 sunflower seeds, just to let people know there was a neighborhood association, right? And every neighborhood was really different. And this is just, I'm not going to go through this, but this was a real nice, quick sentence about what was so different about all the neighborhoods. This was the size of postcards. Daniel made the prints. I interviewed people and wrote the stories, as did a few other people. And then we put these stacks of these cards, like business cards, at the stores, at the library, around that neighborhood, Bayside, and people picked them up and got to meet. They could take it home. So they got a piece of art. They got to meet somebody in their neighborhood that they might not have known. Libbytown ended up having poetry as their main thing. We put 100 different poems that the Maine State Poet Laureate and I edited down into workable bits from stories and poems that people had written. And we had 12 big banners along the street sides. And we made stencils out of it. So as a neighborhood project every spring, they can stencil poems. Not going to say much other than there was a wonderful poetry project that everybody just loved, where people took 3 photos. And then we had like a slideshow where people got to talk about why they took that person, that street corner, and why inside their apartment. This neighborhood is a lot of immigrant and refugees, they're very poor, and there's a lot of kind of dumpy places. So we took 4 of those places and commissioned 4 artists to make a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful mural out of recycled materials. And these are 2. This is another one. And I don't think we have the 4th, but this one, a professor at USM did it, who works a lot with climate levels. This project, homelessness and gentrification, instead of just thinking about homelessness, we wanted to include the whole package. So Strong partners were USM's, University of Southern Maine social work, graduate students in social work. And they went and interviewed 100 people altogether. They divided everybody up and asked them just one-on-one questions. But then we had on May 1st, on a first Friday, so thousands of people and ended up engaging, and 30-foot by 8-foot high chalkboard wall that the art department made for us. And then we had these cubbies, right? And people came and got listened to for 10 minutes about their thinking about it. Because as you'll see in a little bit, I think of listening as the transformative power that we have at the ready at all times. And then we had a pop-up stage. I was surprised how many people used it. And I like to design things where, you know, the reality is most people are going to see your promo, your card, and throw it out, right? I mean, that's it, right? So how do I make that moment, that 5 seconds of seeing what it is when it comes in the mail or up on your screen, count for something that helps drive the goals, right? My projects all start in goals. And so these kind of signs are, hey, these kinds of signs are a good, don't do that again. These kinds of signs are a good thing where I know most people are going to be wandering by, right? And so they'll see these signs and either have thoughts or not. So a vets project, let's see how much more time we got here. A vets project, we did a lot of things. These are vets who are battling PTSD. They served in Afghanistan or Iraq. I was very, pretty particular, but they're all from Maine National Guard. And in the end, what I thought was really successful was making comic books, pairing them with professional, local, for the most part, although it was hard to find people actually who wanted to do it, which surprised me. And then their stories became comic books because, you're thinking of somebody who's battling suicidal thoughts in the middle of the night. A comic book, you try to think of what's the medium that makes sense, right? And so the opposite was true for the Cops and Poetry, right? This is Daniel Minter's story of this wonderful drawings for this wonderful woman who shared a story from Iraq. And what medium best reflects, right? Like public works workers work with their hands, so they get to carve, right? And the poetry was for the police, believe me, we'll talk someday, was a high bar. And they agreed to it. And then the next year, the second one, when there even was a second one, instead of 5 officers volunteering, 15 volunteered. And they wrote the most long, intense poems. And I said, people, this is a calendar. This is a poetry calendar. So anyway, so this is Blessing of the Creatures. It was to celebrate Earth Day. It's a great example of how one COVID thing, it was going to be this fabulous performance on City Hall Plaza. Just getting permission was its own achievement. And in the end, and I welcome you to go and listen, it's 4.5 minutes. Passamaquoddy colleague and friend Vera Francis and I did it together, and it's very moving. And so here's the last slide. As well as consider every project you've done, you might be doing, what are opportunities for this project to deepen justice, challenge inequity, and inspire connection? There has never been a sweeter time than now. It's what creativity can do if we let it. So I really look forward to being in touch with you all if you want. And woohoo, there. Boom! I didn't hit time on my timer, but I think I'm still on time, or we are. Dragging you into this with me. If we're late, we're all late, right? A couple of comments of things that sparked in your head. Just speak out. Mark, hi, welcome. Did you get to see some of that, Mark?
I did. Very inspirational.
Did one thing that gave you a thought, a short version answer?
I guess the community involvement, all the community involvement was pretty inspirational.
Yeah. Don't ask me if I'm going to work with neighborhood associations again, okay?
Well, we're dealing with them ourselves, so I totally get it.
I said, I don't know. We'll talk. Let's see who hasn't shared yet. Oh, wow, Karen Atlas. Hey, Karen. What's something that sparked you in that from your own experience?
Yeah, hey, it's great to see you. And we're involved in a project with the Department of Health now and community groups at the Queensbridge houses. And I think what sparked me was when you talk about the ability to hold contradictions and take risks, how that works out when there's uneven power between the partners.
Yeah. Good.
And it's great to see all your work.
Yeah, exactly. We don't notice it. Is that a good answer? Irfana, are you here?
I am. I'm just listening. I hopped in late, so I got the end of your presentation.
Okay. We just want to say your name and say where you're from or what.
Sure. I'm Irfana. I'm a resource team member and I'm in Washington, D.C.
Awesome. Bet that place is going to take a while to feel different, but probably already started. Great. Everybody else can just, if you can throw a thought, if you got one in the chat, we're going to save it and use it as a resource going forward. I'm going to say a few more things that I thought might be helpful, and then we'll have a breakout. Okay. Ready. Municipal culture. Oh, I was going to put something for y'all in the breakout. I'll do that too in the, what do you call that thing? The chat. Hold on. Here's another thing in the chat that I thought might be useful going forward. Okay, that really worked well. So municipal culture. I'm gonna do one more try. Nope. Okay. You kind of got a little bit in the way this was. I talked about this in our little promo, like, this, but you probably noticed they're risk averse. Many are visible targets for people's frustration, whether it's in their lives and at work, right? In grocery stores, when you're paying people are paying parking tickets, car registration clerks, building inspectors, elected officials, wherever they are. It's an incredibly intense occupation and only getting more so. And I see they are getting, they are having to encounter people's panic and frustration and rage and critiques in a way that really is markedly changed in the last few years, obviously because of the overall situation that the country's been dealing with. But I don't see that turning around in particular. And so anyway, I think any of us can offer, loving may be too strong a word for you all, but thoughtful, respectful appreciation, I think is huge. And it might not happen the first time, the second time, the third time, because, obviously one in that situation has learned to ignore pretty much as you can. But that's one thing. Okay. Then I think there's low morale, and that is often the case. It's never been a picnic in terms of obviously it's a working class occupation for most people. It's a lot of, families together working, in this department and that department. So that's a whole dynamic. But labor relations are often fraught. Morale is usually low. Community input overwhelmingly skews to criticism rather than appreciation. People are working for more hours with less resource and under greater pressure. You can see that here in Maine. A lot of city managers are resigning. 4 police chiefs in southern Maine, which, let's be real, it's not that big. We have a total population in Maine of 1.3 million people. 4 police chiefs will have resigned within the last 6 months. And so I think there's real opportunity, if you haven't already discovered it yourselves, to start out by asking people what's going well, or start out with saying what's not going well. Like, I'm here, I think about things, I'm guessing, you can be very open. I'm guessing you don't get a lot of chance to get asked this, and then just listen, and we'll talk more about that lately. But no one gets listened to enough, and it's a profoundly powerful experience, and you're going to get to practice it some yourselves. One of the, I think, aces in your pocket, there must be a card player in this group, because that's not a thing I usually say, is I mentioned this earlier, creativity and arts-based activity combined with specific goals and strategic design really does have the ability to change relationships, perspectives, policies, and practices. And one of the things I think is particularly, I wanted to make sure to communicate, which those of you are already working in municipal governments, but partly we have to change hearts and minds. Yes, absolutely. But also, obviously, there's policies that are deeply mired in systemic racism and sexism and classism. And so to really decide you're going to work with and partner with municipal governments, you're just in an incredibly powerful place, not an easy place, to actually think through ways of making the kinds of change that last for way longer. Everything of art is welcome, right? And then I think some actually have more, some you can get further and deeper into the roots of things and how things are structured. So I do encourage you, evaluation, I will say this. And I've given whole talks, Jen knows, on evaluation's power to get meetings and interest and commitment. And that is that these are problems that they can't solve any other way. A lot of the problems that they're experiencing. How do you improve police morale, right? I mean, yes, we can think of, like, I'm sure we can come up with some list, but it's not an employee barbecue. It's not a Christmas toys fund. It's not a little police athletic league. I mean, that isn't inconsequential, but how do you really get people engaged? And that's the place where art is essential. So more than once, I've gotten permission to do a project within the city of Portland and maybe some other communities as well, Holyoke, by just having them tell me what the problems are and then giving them a chance to brainstorm possible solutions. They realize there is no solution that they can think of. And so they start realizing, oh my God, like, what do I have to lose, right? And I think we're going to be in a lot more what do you have to lose situations that you hear and I will be able to leverage into meaningful projects. I think I interrupted myself, which is not a surprise. But I was going to say, how do you find time? How do you, I can't imagine many of you don't find it challenging. How do you get a city employee to have a moment to even listen, right? Or be listened to? Is that, raise your hand if that's even, right? I mean, when are they? So I say, look for the smokers. That's my little quip. Look for the smokers. They're outside, they're having a cigarette, right? Relationships, and try not to get too much secondhand smoke. Unless you're a smoker too, then give them a light. But that's part of it. Yes, you can make an appointment, but I would say relationships are at the heart of this, and building those relationships in as many directions within a city. If you're not in an anti-union state, there's going to be unions that you want to not ignore, right? That's very much a part of municipal government. There's going to be administration, there's going to be management, there's going to be the staff. There's just a lot of places that you can meet amazing people and build friendships and relationships that can help you make a strong, really impactful project. And I guess I'll just hop on to listening, which is, should we just dive into that? Let me just check for a second. I'll tell you this first. Just the last thing is, I wrote down the nature of humans that make this work possible. And this is really true. And Karen, I don't know that this is much of an answer for you, but one of the three things that really helped me stay steady is that I truly have learned that every human is eager to have a meaningful challenge. You know what I mean? Like you look at a 2-year-old, or, you know, they want to go up the ladder by themselves. They want to go up the ladder by themselves. By the way, they want to go up the ladder by themselves, right? They want a meaningful challenge. And so, and I remember that as people like literally don't talk to me for like an hour at a time when I'm standing there, right? Because they're so scared, or they're like, oh my God, no. Just to remember that they're eager for meaningful challenges. The second is that human beings are also willing to take risks for a meaningful goal. The mayor of Portland, literally the workshop before the dress rehearsal before the opening was very clear. Marty, I've told you again and again, I'm not going to be in the play. Like, why do you have a contract for me? And I had told the theater guy, don't put the contract out for her. She said she doesn't want to be in the play, so just don't do it. And he did it by accident. And I said, I know, and I believe you, but I still think it's possible you might change your mind, and it's fine if you don't, because think of what, you know, stories are getting told here. And here she is working with a homeless guy, a Sudanese leader, a Franco elder, fiddle player, union organizer, you know, Heather Augustine, a Mi'kmaq woman. And she ended up agreeing to be in it, and was incredible. It's all online. You can see the whole show or excerpts. And that's what sometimes it takes, is that level of relaxed confidence and asking more than once, right? And then the other thing, which I'm sure you all know, which is people actually thrive in diversity, even if they don't realize that. And I say it that way because sometimes people don't at all. I mean, obviously we're a terribly segregated nation and communities, but people do thrive. So the more diverse elements you can have in your projects, let alone your lives, the happier, the richer, the more meaningful, the more of value it will feel. So, okay, ready? Listening exchange. Golly, I want to introduce Golly's our tech wizard. She's gonna put y'all in 3 human being. Somebody said to me, "I'm a human being, not a human doing." I said, "Oh my God, I gotta take that." In 3 groups of 3 for 15 minutes, and I'm giving you. Are we putting this? I had a little problem getting this thing in the chat. Can you put it in the chat, Golly? The questions?
It's in there, Marty.
Well, thank you, dear. Whiz. They're pretty simple. You only got time probably for one. I really would appreciate if, bye, Sarah Allen. I really appreciate if you do time. If somebody gets a timer, finds a timer on their iPhone or their smartphone, and does 1 minute. So your answers can be shorter than a minute in your go rounds, but I really ask that they not be longer, just so people get a chance. And you're going to get to meet each other. And the listening exchanges, there's something, the way I do listening exchanges, which is the heart of my work. It's very powerful. I encourage you to do it. Just don't do it with anyone in your family. Is you're not giving advice. You're not solving a problem. You're literally listening to them. You're listening to them like you would a friend who just lost somebody they loved very much. It doesn't have to be a sad listening, right? But it's that deep of a listening. You're literally taking your mind and offering it to them, and they're able to use it. I've gotten to do this for at least 40 years intentionally, and that builds relationships. That lets people have new thoughts, new ideas. It does the same kinds of things, I guess, that I put in that list of impacts of creative engagement. So I'm going to ask that you all do that. So even when it's not your turn, I'm going to ask you, looking at the person whose turn it is, that you're giving them the best attention you got to give. If your mind wanders, of course it does, bring it back. And then when it's time, switch to the next person. And can you all just start and do numbers quick so you don't lose a lot of time with that? And then we'll come back and see what you got. I'll tell you the questions in case it's helpful. The first question is your name, location, and a word about what you do. So I guess you could decide how to do that, but let's just say that's a one go round, okay? And then one thing that's going well that you're pleased with, that's the second go round. Third, a thing that's challenging that concerns you. The fourth is where could you use a hand? First thought, and first thoughts are so valuable. Where could you use a hand? First thought. And then what's your next step? And again, first thought, I think, could be of anything. Could seem related, could not seem. So let's do that and then come back in 15. Golly, is this good? For questions, for comments, for critiques, for jokes?
All right, everyone that's assigned to a group should be in their group.
Awesome. Awesome.
I did have one group of 4 because I didn't want to have
Great.
like
Yeah,
one person by themselves.
great. Okay. Are you all allowed to talk now? Lynn's talking. I encourage people to do it with complete strangers, and it's very powerful. It's unbelievably powerful. It's like lifetime memorable, and I don't know why. I don't know why. The closer we get, the more irritating we behave. But sometimes, right? Myself included. Hi, everybody. Welcome back, back. Nice. So now everybody unmute, and if you have a barking dog like I do, then just mute when they start barking. Okay. But welcome back. So I don't, I mean, how about you just recklessly speak? Apparently some of you are less inclined to speak, so I'm hoping you all go first, because what the hell is this work about if not courage, right? And no limits for humiliation. That's my motto. Oh, I'm supposed to say a couple things. Sorry. I got some helpful input from colleagues. Municipal workers, I already mentioned they're overworked, they're under-resourced, and some abuse the system. Some abuse the system, right? Which made me think of a friend of mine, Cynthia. She's the president of AFL-CIO here in Maine, but she's a longtime friend separate from that. She was a utility worker for most of her career and made shoes for LL Bean for years. But anyway, I said to her, how do you think about this stuff? Not our stuff, but just political, change, social justice. And she said, I look for where things are going well and add resource. And I was like, OMG, wow, never would have thought of that. I look for where things are going well and add resource. I think many of us, myself included, I look for where things are going terribly and try to help, right? And I think she's on to something, people. Add strength, add our brilliance, add our sweet love and connection and ideas where things are going well, at least on occasion, and let them even thrive more, right? Support the strong leaders. Figure out who's really ahead of you or whatever, that's kind of an odd way to say it. But anyway, who do you look to and, let's support each other that way. And then also to just encourage everyone to consider, some of my projects seem like, oh my God, are you kidding me? And I say, start with a small problem, start with any problem you want. But it's very rare for someone to come into city government and say, I'd like to help you. Do you have any problems? Do you have a medium-sized problem? Do you have a smaller problem? And how to get invited in. I would say, and this is big, I had a really unpleasant childhood, to say the least. And it left me not waiting to be liked or wanted or appreciated, right? And it ended up being it put a backwards but really valuable tool in my tool bag, which is I don't wait to be invited. I don't wait to be encouraged. I don't wait to be appreciated. And I want to say just briefly, a lot of times in this field, people are starting to come up with the rules of the right way and the wrong way to do it. Don't listen to that. Don't listen to that. That's just, what happens in a silly society that we're living in. If you have an idea and it's about a community you've got nothing to do with, go pitch your idea. Go for it, right? If you're invited by a community, say yes or no, right? There's so many ways. If you accident, whatever happens, like just try it, give it a go. It makes a very interesting life, and who doesn't want that? So I don't have rules. I go where I'm not wanted all the time. People, you would not believe how many people have agreed to be in things that, I mean, I told you the story about the mayor of Portland, but how many people have decided to go ahead and the last minute, like, if you go on my website or look somewhere, you'll see Rachel Talbot Ross is the NAACP president of back then, and the city's multicultural officer. I called her. She turned me down 5 times about this Homeland Security show, and there's an excerpt of her in her soliloquy. I called her the afternoon of dress rehearsal and said, "Hey, if you want to come and see what we're doing, you're still welcome to be in the show." What theater artist in their right mind says that, right? And she came, and at the end of that dress rehearsal, she said, "I'd like to be in the show." So we spent 3 hours together the next day. She blew it away that night, and for 2 more runs, like week-long runs, did it, and it was incredible. So don't give up, Worst thing doesn't work out. You try something else. And be confident. Why not? You're you. That says a lot, right? You're you. There's no one else like you. So, okay, now, please re-unmute. And Christine, are you willing to start again? Make it a habit, make it a tradition?
Yes, what am I talking about?
Anything you want, something from the time or something from your listening group that you noticed. Obviously, I forgot to tell everybody, don't mention what anybody else says. That's really important. Like, don't reference it at all. Our minds work differently when we know that it's going to be confidential, but you can talk about what you said if you want.
Oh, I'm just motivated. Yeah. More motivated. Thank you. Inspired.
How was the listening? Anything
it was
noticed?
very good. Mm-hmm. I don't want to talk about what they said. Sorry.
Exactly. Believe me, in these groups, somebody always does, and I have to go, excuse me. Jamie Horder.
Well, I appreciated some of the things that you just said about just go into a space, even if you're not wanted there. And I love that in being like a wonderful act of rebellion to step into spaces where we are not welcomed into, to say, no, I want to help make a difference in my community and be there and show up, regardless of what the people who are holding power say about that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hey, Mark, how are you doing?
Oh, there was another Mark. Is that me, Mark? Okay.
Why not?
I'm sorry?
Any insights, any personal insights or takeaways, or how was the listening?
Yeah, it was great. It's always good to hear other projects that are going on. And, if you all are like anything like me, you tend to work in a bubble sometimes by yourself and don't necessarily get to get re-energized. So whenever you're hearing about other projects and the things that other people are going through and hearing about their successes as well, specifically their successes, it tends to re-energize me. So
great.
That's been key for me today.
Great. Yoko, you're doing something, right? Yoko's just hopped. Chris Holmes, are you here? That's a lovely holding shot.
I am here. Sorry. Yeah, and I'm so appreciating being here. We are in the first few months of our project and have a lot of different pieces, but they haven't really come together in cohesion yet. So being able to think things through and listen to people is really helpful in getting my mind organized.
Can you think of one particular thing? You won't say who it is or what it was because of confidentiality, but from either something we did beforehand or from the listening group, one particular idea you're leaving with?
Well, I too love your idea that you go where you're not necessarily invited, because in the partnership that we have with the city, which we're struggling with right now, they're used to being complained about. They're not used to being helped. And I'm really thinking a lot about how we can turn that conversation around. So that's been helpful. Just, just like that 2 minutes that you talked about it.
Great. Great. Matt in Des Moines.
Yes, I am in Des Moines. I was able to share some pretty legitimate enthusiasm. My project happens to be at a place where we've been working almost weekly with 3 different artist teams, which has been connecting them like through Zoom primarily to area stakeholders for fact finding as they develop proposals. And that process has been so inspirational and just fun. So that's something that I was able to share. And without getting into all of what we heard, I think the listening was just, we were all excited that at the end of the time we had gone through all of the questions and wanted 10 more minutes with each other.
Of course. Yeah. And then another 10 and then another, right?
Yeah.
Megan in Mississippi.
Can you repeat the question that we're?
Yeah, it's pretty loosey goosey. Anything you want to say to us?
I just was comforted, not that I'm like happy, but it's nice to know that other groups are dealing with COVID challenges, and that we're not the only ones where the timetable's a little slower and things aren't going exactly, to plan.
Right. Marion Sheboygan.
Yeah, I think I mostly have just come away feeling glad to be able to connect. And it's fun to see a couple familiar faces, and to just start thinking about ways that I can frame relationships and go back to different projects.
Does one come to mind if you're willing to be on the spot a tiny bit?
Does one
project come to mind?
Project?
You're so welcome.
Yeah, so I'm just starting the process of applying for a Bloomberg Philanthropies asphalt art grant, and talking with the city about that and trying to figure out whether they seem interested, which is exciting, and also have another partner that they want to have involved. So trying to negotiate adding a third partner to that relationship, I think will be interesting. So I've been thinking about that.
Lovely. Anyone like to go? Karen, John, anyone who hasn't gone? Mary, Yoko?
Another question that I have that I'm mulling over, I brought up in my group, and the work is, again, we're the cultural partner with the Department of Health, and the work is so relationship based and so much about sort of building that reciprocity, and sort of thinking about going the next step, because our city government's about to turn over and probably all the people we've built relationships with will leave. So the question is, how do you, and really, and it's a question we're all asking on both sides of the partnership, how do you embed this beyond individuals?
One thought, and I don't know that this would work in the specific issue you're referencing or project, but and partly my building the relationships with the unions means it's embedded for decades, right? And it's rare that a management of a department doesn't look favorably on something that the unions want that doesn't cost a lot of money. So you can build a lot of, you can get a lot of extra resource, but also yeses, I found. If it's clear, if the unions made it clear to the management that they're actually excited about this project. And that's a huge win. I know in New York City, it's a union town. So, and that isn't quite what you're saying, right?
Well, I was asking it more around the community members, sustainability there. But given the that the city government would maintain that commitment in the community. And it's because it's a community it hadn't really been working that much in before. But I mean, your answer is really interesting to me too.
Right.
That's the
And
exact point.
Mark, yeah.
I'm sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's the exact point I was going to make. I think you could probably take what Marty said there and just replace the unions for the community. And because we're dealing with the same thing, the person that is over, or that used to be over, arts and culture for our city recently left. So we have another individual, and she's done a phenomenal job. She's doing an amazing job. And she sees that the community is involved in the project. So that's kind of prompted her to become more involved in the project as well. So
right.
I think it all starts with the community. If they see that the community is engaged and involved and is interested, then that kind of helps them kind of prioritize, if that's an appropriate word. That kind of helps them prioritize and kind of figure out, where do they need to prioritize.
The other player, Karen, and everyone, is like the elected officials, right? And I feel like I could do a whole workshop on elected officials, like when to stay away and when not to not what to hide, what to reveal, right? But if you in New York City, certainly elected officials last a long time, right?
Well, they're actually all turning over to the 3/4 of the city council and the mayor and the.
Oh, really? 3/4 of the city council? Oh, okay.
So it's kind of a specific instance, but it is an interesting question when you're in a city where there's going to be a major leadership transition, which can be both a challenge and an opportunity. So it's
Correct.
looking at it with both ways.
Right. And within the city agencies, you can just piss somebody off terribly by involving an elected official, right? Or you can, right? You can do a lot of things. One thing I didn't say, which may be helpful, is I always have overt goals and covert goals. I did not ever say to the police department, I've done 4 major projects with them. I never said, and part of this is to work on your racism, right? And yet I did nothing with them. I designed no project where that wasn't a key part of the design for them, for their sakes too, right? And so, I just want to say that because that doesn't get said a lot, that you do get to think about the whole situation. And you get to train artists. That's really fun. I forbade the poets to ever quote poetry with the officers, ever, ever, ever. I made them raise their hand. And I said, you're the leader, you're the teacher, you're not the person who desperately, understandably needs to hear your poetry heard and appreciated. Go find somewhere else for that. Don't make the officers have to listen to your poems, please. And one person immediately violated it, and the room turned into ice. And I thought, well, at least the other poets can feel it, like how well that went over. So don't be afraid to be in charge, and use what you know and make your mistakes and figure it out and bring in help when you can. But, I screen all artists very much. I read their work. I meet them. It's not an open, there's a real process. Because I feel like it's so precious, and municipal employees are giving their time, and a lot of the money's hidden. A lot of the money never gets acknowledged that gets spent on these projects by the union people, but also the cops never added up all the hours they spent. The city's head would go off the roof if they knew, right? But they could tell it was making a difference. But to make the case, you can't always make it on paper. So, can you write something in the chat? Takeaway, you just did nice in the go around, but if you can just throw something in for the LISC and the NEA to take home and put under their pillow. I end with a sweet story. In the Abundance Project, one of the questions that over 5,000 people answered, which is, what is your earliest memory connected to money in any way at all? And my favorite story out of all those stories that I heard was when an older participant said when they were young, they lost their first tooth and they put it under their pillow, and in the morning the tooth fairy had come and there was a nickel. You could tell how old people were by how much money they got for the most part. There was a nickel, right? And so they spent all day making another little tooth out of clay. Thinking. They put it under their pillow, and in the